Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on learn visualization to e-GMAT Verbal. My name is Rajat Sidhana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm really happy to be here with Payal, who's the other co-founder. Before we start this session, I want to thank GMAT Club, BB and Abhijit at GMAT Club for organizing this session and for letting us be a part of this session. So super excited to be here, and hopefully you guys find this interesting and productive. So with that, let us get started. Payal, do you want to say something before we
Yeah,
get started?
just super excited to be here and talk about visualization in both SC and CR and how visualization as a skill set can help you get to your target score on the test. So, yeah, we're really very excited about it. And I hope that you guys are as excited as we are.
Okay. All right, perfect. And thank you, Kevin. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, that's the right screen. Let's get started. All right. So let me hide this. So again, our goal today is very, very simple. We want to make sure that we give each one of you a template to achieve 90th percentile on GMAT Verbal, and want to keep things very, very simple. I also want to talk about two things. One is visualization, and the second is the right approach to solving questions. Now, the approaches that you've that we're going to talk about, you've heard about this, but we're going to talk about the e-GMAT flavor to these approaches, the meaning based approach and the pre-thinking approach. But then let's kind of go back. What does it take to achieve 90th percentile? And then this one says SC, but we're talking about SC or CR or RC. It's, the philosophy, the principles remain the same, and so fundamentally you need to do two things. One is you need to answer questions with high accuracy, and then you've got to answer them quickly. And we're going to focus on achieving both these goals today. So having said that, let us get started. So Payal, this is over to you. I'm going to stop sharing and let you do your magic.
All right, let me start sharing my screen. Present. Okay, I hope I'm sharing the right screen.
It is.
It is? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And all right, so you all can see my screen. Sounds good. All right, so let's get going with certain housekeeping tips first. I ask you lots and lots of questions. The whole point of this session is that you guys learn. And in our experience, you will learn a whole lot more if you interact. And I ask you, as I said, there'll be lots of questions through polls and through just subjective questions that I ask you. So answer, you've taken the time to attend this session, so be as interactive as you can. And with regards to your strategy related questions as to how is it that you should be preparing for the test, how is it that you can go from your current score to that 90th percentile score, definitely ask those questions towards the end of the session. And Kevin, thank you so much. I'm very glad that you got a V40, and thank you for your appreciation here. Congratulations for that. So with that, there are two questions that we're going to talk about in sentence correction. So I want you to first take a stab at this question. This is an official question. So I want you to not put your answers in the chat over here. You see the form link. So I want you to post your responses over there. And then we are going to discuss that as well in detail. So go ahead, take some time and answer this question, and then we'll discuss it to great depths.
All right, guys. One of the things we want to make sure we do is, abide by some of the ground rules that we have set up. So one of the ground rules is please don't post your answers in the chat pod. Um, the reason why we are here is we want to learn, and we don't want to make sure that everyone who's here learns. So the goal over here is not to flaunt how much you know, but to really say you know the correct answer for the right reasons, and to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to respond to questions. So please don't put the responses in the chat unless and until we ask you to do so. All right. So with that, let me. All right, we just have about 10 responses so far. Let's get a few more responses here. We have about 40 students here in the webinar. All right, 50 odd. So the link is there that you guys have. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right.
Okay,
Well,
so how did we do?
how did we do? We
Yes,
have about 40% of people who are at choice C.
40. Okay.
Okay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another 35% at choice D.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah. Another 15% at
I'm
E.
sure E. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I think the
Not that
remaining
many takers for A and B. That's good.
B. I think is no one's for A.
No one's for A. Okay. Yeah. As expected. B maybe what, 5%?
B is the remaining 10%. I think.
Remaining 10%. Okay. Sorry. Didn't do the
Yeah.
calculation right. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. So, when you guys read this sentence, first of all, did you find any comparison in this sentence? I'm pretty sure a lot of you were able to recognize that there is a comparison, and which means that there is a definite mistake over here in the original sentence because the by is missing from the comparison over here, right? So, it's very clear given the responses that you guys had, it's very clear that as a group you were able to eliminate choices A and B. So no groundbreaking thing over here, right? There's no by, there's a comparison. Comparison is not stated in a parallel manner, so A and B are out. Now, how many of you, and I want you to type that in the chat here, how many of you did a lot of back and forth among choices C, D, and E? And let me remind you 40% over here, 35% over here, and I think 10% over here. So, how many of you ended up doing a whole lot of back and forth amongst these choices? And Rajat, I am not able to see the comments. Let me see. Okay, here.
Yep.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah. So I see that um, Shakil did, Chess Pie did. How about others? How many of you did a lot of back and forth amongst choices C, D, and E? Yes. And the reason for that is what we're going to talk about as to how is it that you can prevent that back and forth. Okay. Now, what I want you to now do is think about coming to an end. What does coming to an end mean? And for that, I want you to visualize the meaning of coming to an end because that's a very, very important skill. One big reason why you all ended up doing back and forth amongst these choices was because when you read the sentence the first time, you outrightly rejected coming to an end, thinking it's weirdly constructed. This in no universe can this be the correct answer. What you did not do was you did not spend the effort in understanding what is the author actually trying to tell me by using this expression coming to an end. And that is what we're going to talk about, that whenever you read the original sentence, you truly have to visualize what is the author intending to say without coming to a premature conclusion that the author has made a mistake and I definitely need to correct that mistake. Okay, and that is what we're going to do right now through this another example. Visualization as a skill is something that you have to build, right? And for that you need to have that motivation to first get inside the head of the author as to why the author has used a certain expression. Now there are different ways of building that skill. One of the ways is to think of a parallel context, right? And this is when you're building your skill set. So let's not worry about the original sentence at all. Let's just change the context completely into something that you all can associate with. So let's read this sentence. The extinction of the woolly mammoth was triggered by the coming to an end of the fifth ice age. Now, what I want you to picture is, I want you to picture um, this timeline over here. I want you to think about these woolly mammoths who are, who are walking on the planet Earth, and who are really very huge mammals, right? Now, I want you to read the sentence and visualize the extinction of woolly mammoth was triggered. Now, something to think about. Extinction doesn't happen right away, right? It's not that one fine day there's something that happened and the woolly mammoth disappeared from the land altogether, right? The sentence is saying that the extinction was triggered by what? Triggered by the coming to an end of the fifth ice age, which means that when this fifth ice age started to happen, when this transition of the ice age ending started to happen, that's when the woolly mammoth started to become extinct. So from let's say right now there are about 10 over here, it came down gradually, it started to come down, but that end started to happen when the ice age started to end, right? That is how you visualize the coming to an end part. Okay, now when you do this visualization, you will right off come to the understanding that what we are talking about is a transition that's happening, right? By the coming to an end, as the ice age is starting to come to an end, as those atmosphere, those environmental events are happening, the vegetation is changing, the landscape is changing, as that transition is happening, that's when the extinction of the woolly mammoth is triggering to happen. Okay, now with that understanding, you start to think about, okay, what do the other answer choices mean? Okay, Raja, do you want to add something
Well, I
here?
want to just ask one question here.
Mhm.
So why do you think it's important to visualize the original sentence that's given to you? Why do you think this exercise is valuable in the context of what's happening on the GMAT? Anyone? I think, yeah, the responses take a bit of time.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think, while you put your responses in, that I wanted to talk about is when you think about a sentence, it's supposed to do a job. It's supposed to communicate a meaning, and unless and until you understand that meaning, so this technique of visualization is designed for you to be able to understand, what is the job that the author wants you to do with the sentence. Unless and until you understand the job, you won't be able to figure out how to express that meaning properly. So so visualization is a really important tool to, not just for SC, we'll see in CR as well. We won't see it in RC today, but it's an excellent tool for RC as well. And so really important to know why you're doing this, because this original sentence has a job. It's not doing that job properly because of the parallelism error or the comparison error. And so you've got to understand what job should the corrected version do, so that you can choose amongst the option which is the most appropriate corrected version. Okay.
Mhm.
uh, with that, let's go forward, Pile.
Okay, right. So Ved has actually asked a question. You've marked the beginning and not the end. Is that correct? Absolutely, that's correct. And that's the part of visualization. What you are asking this question, which means that you automatically assume that the author is talking about the end and not the coming to an end. Right. And that's where the visualization is important. You had already marked in your head, you'd already assumed that what the author is saying, that the author has made a mistake, right? Which is why you automatically assumed he's talking about the end. But as such, what the author is saying is that the starting point of the ending of the ice age is what the author is talking about. So it's the transition that the author wants to communicate. And you have to understand that before you start looking at the answer choices. Because if you don't do that, you will end up doing that back and forth that was happening between amongst these choices. The period has started to end. That's what the author wanted to communicate, right? That's what coming to an end means. It's not the action of ending the period, which corresponds to the 35% of the votes that were given to choice D. It is not the end of the period. It is that the period has started to end. It's that transition that the author wanted to communicate. And that's what we all need to understand before we even take a look at the answer choices, so that we answer the question correctly and in less time. Both of those things are important for you to get to that 90th percentile in SC. Okay. Now, after you understand the meaning of coming to an end, you then look at the answer choices. Now, when you take a look at the answer choices, you know that D is outrightly wrong, E is outrightly wrong. Okay. The only possible answer choice that is the correct answer choice is choice C. And this level of visualization is what gets you to the correct answer choice without doing that back and forth amongst the answer choices. Okay. And again, you don't have to think about, whether it's a noun, whether it's, I mean, right now I'm not even talking about any grammatical constructs. Grammar hasn't come into picture at all, except to understand the various aspects of the language to communicate the meaning, right? You don't have to think about whether coming to an end is a noun, what is it acting as. No, you have to understand why if the author has said something, if the author has used this group of words, what does the author intend to communicate? That is what you need to focus on. Okay, so choice C is the correct answer. Okay, what do you guys think about this? As soon as you visualized what does coming to an end mean, did this question become easy to you? Did that back and forth get eliminated completely?
Okay. Um, I think we should also go through choices DNA because I know we have a
Yes,
lot to cover this in this
yes,
session.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So again, with regards to, when you're building the skill set, it's not only important to understand the original choice, to understand what it exactly communicates so that you can get to the correct answer, but once you make the correct selection, you need to review all the answer choices, and to hone in your skill of visualization, you should visualize what the other answer choices are talking about. So if you look at choice D over here, the extinction of the woolly mammoth was triggered by ending the fifth ice age. Visualize in your head, what does that mean? When you're doing that strategic review of the solution of the question, think about, what does by ending the fifth ice age mean? What it means is that the extinction was triggered, that someone or something ended that fifth ice age, and that is what triggered the extinction. That is not what the author wanted to say. The author wanted to communicate that transition that has started to happen when the extinction happened, right? The author did not want to communicate that somebody is doing the action of ending the fifth ice age. Okay. Now again, the analysis that I'm asking you to do over here, that's the analysis that you do when you are reviewing your solutions, when you are in the practice mode. Because think about it, right off the bat, when you are starting to answer SC questions, you will not be able to answer them within 90 seconds. You have to build your skill set, and the visualization skill
Pile,
set.
pile. We'll talk about the timing, I think, and
Okay.
I can take that on. So I think
Okay.
let's focus on choice E also.
Okay. All right. Okay. So choice E, what that is saying is extinction was triggered by the end of the fifth ice age. What that means is that the fifth ice age, when it ended, that's when the transition period started. So if you look at choices A and C, what choices A and C are saying is that in terms of the timeline, the extinction happened at the start of the end of the ice age, right? When that period started, let's say that was 100-year period, that's when the extinction of the woolly mammoth started. What choice E is saying is that the ice age ended, that's when the transition started to happen. So these two choices communicate completely different meanings. Okay, which is why choice E, even though it looks very sophisticated, it is absolutely incorrect, because it does not, it changes the intended meaning, it changes what the author intended to communicate, and you can see that difference in from the difference as is evident on the timeline view that you can see on the screen. So, long and short of it is, whenever you're reading the original sentence, you have to read it with the intent to understand everything that the author is intending to communicate. Without knowing that, you cannot just move on to the answer choices, because if that happens, then that back and forth happens and you have no basis for rejecting or accepting any of the answer choices. And when you see choices such as choice C, which is not written in the most elegant manner, you outrightly reject it. Okay, so that's the whole point of visualizing, of understanding the original intended meaning of the author before you move on to the answer choices. Okay, and that's the skill that you have to build.
One of the other things that I want to really talk about, I didn't know, Pal, this would take you over. I'm so sorry about that.
That's
Um,
okay.
yeah. One of the other things I want to talk about over here, Alak said we have just 90 seconds max in SC, right? Absolutely. You just have 90 seconds. Now, are you going to give the exam tomorrow? No, you're not going to give the exam tomorrow. Frankly, when you learn something, you're going to take longer. If you're not taking longer, 9 out of 10 times you're not learning something. If you're not learning something, you're not going to hit that 90th percentile ability. What's just from in the chat pod? What kind of scores are you guys aiming for on the GMAT out of 800? If you can get that, while we get that, let me just go forward. So one thing that you've got to understand is you will not if you're in the skill building phase and you're not taking longer, you're doing something wrong. Okay, and as I say that as an expert who studies learning, not just the GMAT but the process of learning, we study that.
Mhm.
And so think about it. If you were to really learn how to play 100 miles per hour balls, or 90 miles per hour if you're playing cricket, or even in baseball or so, in that case, if you go on the practice pitch, if your coach is throwing you balls that you can very easily hit in in the required time, you're probably not learning anything, right? Unless and until you're missing some balls. Or in other ways, if you want to learn how to hit a ball, one of the first things you got to learn is how do you shift your body weight. The second thing is how do you build your swing. The third thing is essentially how do you make sure that you're watching the ball while you're doing all of it. Each one of these steps is going to take you a lot longer than what someone who's playing the match would do.
Yeah. I think the thing to keep in mind is that if you have this level of clarity, so I'm coming back to the sentence in question, that if you have, let me just share my screen here. Oh, I have to add. Rajat, can you add this back?
Yes, I'm going to add this back.
Yeah,
Ah,
sorry. Yes. So if the level of understanding or the commitment that we are looking from you all right now in this session is that if you visualize the sentence to this degree, then you will be able to answer the question accurately and in less time. That is the understanding that we want you all to have, right? That what is it, what level of understanding of the sentence you need to have so that you don't do the back and forth amongst the answer choices, because you all experience that back and forth. Visualization is one tool to get there. That skill, which building that visualization skill is the way to get there. We're going to talk about in the next from the next question. We're going to understand one other skill which is very important for you to get there. Okay, and yeah, go ahead, Rajat.
yeah, and the other piece which I think you have to really understand is why do you need to visualize the other options? Because you're not going to get this question here, or the same question that you see over here on the GMAT. The important thing is to build that skill, because it may happen that you may get a question that is testing the meaning that's communicated by
Choice
choice D,
C.
which is by the action of ending, rather than what's communicated by choice C. Because
Mhm,
choice D by itself is completely logical. It's just that, and there's nothing wrong with choice D, it's just that that's not what the author wanted to communicate to begin with.
mhm,
And unless and until you understand that, when it comes to those 700 level questions, you're going to miss those. Pyle, can we move forward? I think
mhm.
rather than use. So again, really important piece over here that you have to understand is uh, if you visualize questions, there are two things that are going to happen. You're going to be able to reject answer choices with confidence, and you're going to reduce that back and forth, which consumes time on the exam. Now, while you're building that skill, while let me ask you when to move, please.
Mhm.
While you're building that skill, you're gonna take longer. If you're not taking longer, there's something wrong. You're solving things that are really easy for you. Okay. Let's move forward over here, Pyle. Okay. Let's move forward as well. We've talked about this in this case. Um, and again, this is why, when you think about learning the audiovisual way, we or visualizing things, that's why in the course, we have things in an audiovisual manner. Why? Because you can really see, you can translate what's written to something that's going on in your mind, because that's the muscle that you need to build over there. If you don't build that muscle, you're going to be hard pressed as questions become more challenging. 600 level questions, yes, you will do. You'll have good accuracy there. Once you get to 650, 700 levels, that's when you're going to really face challenges. And that's where things actually start to become important. If you want to get to that 700 score, that's the piece that you need. Okay.
Essentially, you have to get to the point wherein, as you're reading the words that the author has written, you're creating that mental image, right? That visualization. That is the skill that you have to build. How do you create a mental image out of the words that you see in the sentence?
Okay.
Rajat?
So again, we need to want to achieve this. We want to answer questions with high accuracy. And when I say high accuracy means high confidence, and then do them quickly. The quickly part is an output that will happen as a result of visualization. And you're going to see that because you're going to see that back and forth go down. Even if you take a minute and a half to visualize this, as long as you visualize choice A, go confidently to answer choices. Do not have that back and forth. Trust yourself. That minute and a half will go down to 20 seconds in about 20 questions or so. And that's the
Mhm.
place where you want to be. Let's move forward, Payal. And I'm going to let's move forward as well. This is an example of a student who scored V47, and he says if you don't get the meaning correct, then it's like hammering your head against the wall. This will work for six easier questions, but when it goes to those 700 level questions, you will feel like you're hammering your heads against a wall or so, and you don't want to do that. You want to focus on learning. And if you look at success on GMAT Club, if you go to the review section where you have verified reviews, you're going to find that e-GMAT accounts for 3 out of 5 700 plus scores and reported on GMAT Club, and so this is since January of 2021. Go take a look at the stats, and if I were to represent this on a chart, there are about 8 partners on GMAT Club, and we account for 60%. The other 7 combined account for 40% of all 700 plus scores. And I see pretty much everyone who's here is looking at those 700 plus scores. Now, we would not have this success if people's timing did not get fixed by the time
Mhm.
they practice these skills. If these skills did not work.
Mhm.
Okay. So focus on learning. Don't focus on learning excessive grammar. Focus on learning visualization. Learn the appropriate amount of grammar. Build skills, and you'll see those scores come through.
And
Let's kind of
believe me,
reinforce.
it's going to be a lot more easy for you to focus on the logic.
Yes, all of you are logical. That's why you want to be
Yeah.
managers.
Yeah.
You're not trying to be grammarians
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. All right. Next question, Rajat.
Yes, let's do the next question.
And Basam, very well said. This means that you're building your skills while practicing and therefore learning how to do things. Absolutely right. Yeah.
The same way he seems to be building his muscle from his icon. So good job there.
Yeah. All right. Rajat, are we ready with the next poll?
Yeah,
Yes.
we have the
Okay.
next poll question. Let's put that in the chat as well.
Okay. You're putting it?
I think Juhi is going to put it or Karthik is going to add that. But let's
Okay.
for the next question.
All right. So here's the next question. Another official question, 700 plus level. As you're reading the sentence, visualize it in your head. Make a mental image of the sentence. Okay.
And Karthik, let's I think remove the link right now so that they can see choice E. Hmm. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Perfect.
Please don't post the answers over here in the chat. Put the answers in the forms, please.
All right, last 15 seconds. Let's get those answers in. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me refresh the once more. All right, pal, we have the responses.
All right, go ahead.
We
I'm ready.
have uh, we have about 48% in choice B.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, I don't know why is it not giving me the percentages. So yeah, I I have about another a 30 odd percent in D, which is very surprising.
30%. Oh, it's not surprising.
Okay, choice
Mm-hmm,
D has
yeah.
about 30 odd percent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I think there's another 16, 17% in E.
Okay.
And then we have just the remaining is choice. No one has choice C. Choice A is the remaining,
Okay. All right. Interesting. Hmm.
4 5% or so, something like that.
Very interesting. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. Uh, I'll put 5% here. Okay. So, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you a simplified structure of the sentence, and then I'm going to ask you certain questions that I want you to answer utilizing that simplified structure. Okay. So, here is the simplified structure. Although appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins, heirloom tomatoes grown from seeds saved during the previous year. They are often green and striped or have plenty of bumps and bruises. Heirlooms are more flavorful and thus in increasing demand. Okay. So all I've done is I've taken this big sentence and I have broken it down into chunks. And that's what we call as the sentence structure of this long, bulky sentence. Okay. So I now what I want you to do is I want you to see answer the questions that I'm going to ask you looking at this simplified sentence structure. Okay, so I'm going to take the sentence structure on the screen. Okay, so you're not looking at the big chunky sentence, you're looking at the simplified sentence structure, broken down sentence structure of that big chunky sentence. And here's my first question to you, and this may be a little bit tricky, Rajat, because it's
It
not
is going to be
real
tricky.
time,
Yes.
right? So
Sure.
yeah. So, what kind of tomatoes appears less appetizing? The answer over here is heirloom tomatoes. I will give you the answers because if I wait for the answer, there's that time lag, and then it's not gonna.
Yeah, this presentation was originally created for a completely real-time environment.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just go through it, and if you have doubts in any of the answers, I think you can then post those in the.
Right, right. Heirloom tomatoes. The next question is, what does green and striped or have bumps and bruises imply? What this implies is that these heirloom tomatoes are not very attractive, right? When you see the words bumps and bruises, I mean, maybe green doesn't right away tell you that it's not attractive, but when you read the words bumps and bruises, it means that they are not attractive. And what are green and striped or have bumps and bruises? It's the heirloom tomato. So essentially, when you combine these two bits of information, you come to the conclusion that the author is saying that these heirloom tomatoes are not attractive. Okay. What are more flavorful? Heirloom tomatoes are more flavorful. It's explicitly stated over here, heirloom tomatoes are more flavorful. Okay. Then What is the contrast? Why am I asking you about the contrast? Because there is this contrast word already there in the sentence, although, right? So you have to understand, if the author has used the word although, what contrast is the author communicating? The contrast that the author is communicating is that heirloom tomatoes don't look good as the other tomatoes, but heirloom tomatoes taste great. They may not be very attractive, but they're very yummy, right? That's what the author is trying to say with this big chunky sentence. Now my question to you is, I asked you these questions. These questions actually capture the entire essence of what the author wants to communicate. Will you agree with me if I say that with this simplified sentence structure, answering these questions and getting the essence of what the author wants to communicate was a very easy exercise? I'll have
While
to
they're
wait for that
answering,
response, Rajat.
yeah, while they're answering, I just want to make an interesting observation.
Uh-huh.
So we had this one entity, the chaotic cooking, and I think is this individual posted for the first time. I'm just wondering how much of this is associated with the fact that this question is about
Cooking.
heirloom tomatoes, something that the person associates with. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
but thank you for posting. We do love participation, and yes. All right. So going back to Pyle's question, once you these questions weren't difficult to answer. If you actually took the time or take the time out and really just say, okay, what is it that the meaning, the sentence intends to communicate, and what's the reason for that contrast? Okay,
What is that contrast? Yes.
what is that contrast? Why is it why is it that the contrast exists? Is this a logical contrast?
Mhm. Exactly. Now,
Okay.
when you think about once you have understood, that this is what the author wants to communicate, and I'll come to this slide later because can I go back to, let me go back to the over here. Now, when you choice D was selected, was the most popular incorrect answer choice. Now, there is a contrast that exists in the original choice. Tell me, in choice D, where is that contrast? There's no contrast whatsoever. All this sentence is saying is stating the facts. It's not the sentence, the author through choice D is not presenting any contrast. The author is simply saying that heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing, heirloom tomatoes are more flavorful. The author is just stating two different facts about heirloom tomatoes. The contrast is gone altogether, which is the only reason why choice D is absolutely wrong. You don't have to go into any of the grammatical constructs. You don't have to think about, okay, what is this, what is that. All you have to think about is, what did the author want to communicate in the first place? And then when you look at choice D, you have to say, okay, is there a contrast here? Absolutely not. There is no contrast. Okay, that is why choice D is wrong. And now I'm going to go through the other choices as well. But the reason why I wanted to come back to choice D over here was this was the most popular incorrect answer choice, right? But had you spent that time or upfront in understanding what the author wants to communicate, had you extracted all the aspects of what the author wanted to communicate, rejecting choice D would have been a cakewalk, because right away you would have said, there's no contrast word here, so this choice has to be wrong. You would not have even spent the time in reading through that choice completely. And that's the power of understanding everything that the author wants to communicate. Okay, and here that exercise became very easy because we created the sentence structure. So extracting all those aspects became really very straightforward. Rajat, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think the piece which is there is with that analyzing that the original choice, what it does is it gives you a checklist that you say that my correct option needs
Exactly.
to satisfy, and when you take that forward, you're able to reject answer choices easily. And one of the things when we see people make mistakes on difficult questions is even people who do the first step, right, who visualize the original option, as they don't really take that checklist forward while selecting the correct answer. And Basam, you're absolutely right. You did select choice C. When I refreshed the page, I did go and confirm that. And yeah, it's when we but when we took the last poll, at that time it had not registered. So apologies for that. All right, let's go forward.
Mhm. Okay.
Mm.
Now, another thing that the sentence structure helps you do is identify all the deterministic grammatical errors. And I'm not saying understand all the grammatical errors, only the deterministic grammatical errors. And that's what the simplified sentence structure helps you identify. Over here, when you see this sentence structure, instead of that big chunky sentence, what you see over here is heirlooms are has this is a subject, this is a verb, subject, verb. Both the subject verb pairs accounted for. But this heirloom tomatoes is hanging without any verb, right? So you right away things start to jump out at you, not only in terms of understanding the meaning, but also in terms of identifying these deterministic grammatical errors. And that's the power of creating the sentence structure of long chunky sentences. Okay, it helps you with understanding the meaning, and it helps you with identifying the deterministic grammatical errors. Okay, now over here, when you see that there is no verb for heirloom tomatoes, you will then come to you will then analyze the answer choices, right? There are two outputs that you're going to take from the initial understanding of the meaning. One is you'll have a very clear idea of what the author wants to communicate. In this case, I've created a table in my head because I was able to visualize this table as I was reading through the sentence. And then I also know that there is no verb for heirloom tomatoes, so I know that deterministic grammatical error in this sentence. Now I take that forward and I look at the answer choices and look at the comparison with choice D. Choice D has no contrast at all, right? So choice D is incorrect. And that's the impact of visualization. Now look at choice C. Choice C over here, similar sentence structure. The only difference between choices A and C is that in choice C, although they appear is there. So there's a subject verb pair. In choice A, it simply says although appearing. But as far as the remaining part of the sentence goes, it follows the exact same sentence structure. So the reason for which you rejected choice A is also applicable for choice C. So again, you're back and forth amongst answer choices. Your detailed analysis of answer choices in the test environment has really gone down a whole lot. Why? Because you spent that much amount of time in analyzing the original sentence. That's the power of spending those extra seconds on the original sentence, focusing 60% of your time on the original sentence.
Another way to say that is that if you chose choice C, you essentially did not reject choice A for the right reason, because
Exactly. Very right.
choice C has the exact same error that choice A has,
Exactly. Yeah.
and which I think also goes to choice E, although the structure is very similar. Oh,
Right.
structure is different. I'm sorry.
Right. And I would also say choice D, if you selected choice D, you did not understand what the author wanted to communicate. Right, so you rejected choice, so you didn't even understand what the author wanted to communicate. And here so Rajat, you're absolutely right. If you selected choice C but rejected choice A, you didn't even reject choice A for the right reasons. And this is how, as you get this kind of feedback when you're reviewing the answer choices, when you're reviewing the solutions, as you get this kind of feedback, you start to figure out where are the holes in your process, what are the skills that you have to build. Okay. Now, choice E. This is the opportunity for you when you're doing strategic review. This is the opportunity for you to enhance your skill set. If you look at choice E has a very different sentence structure than choice A, right? But if you apply your sentence structure capability over here, you will end up seeing that there is no verb for heirloom tomatoes here as well. It's the same error that is propagating across all these choices. Okay, and again, your analysis would become
Pal, can you mark which heirloom tomatoes just using the pen?
this
Yes. So this subject has no verb.
one.
Okay. So I think in if you were to summarize this entire sentence, this is a 700 level question on GMAT lab. I think it's, but the difficulty level is 80% or higher. Um, and one thing that you really see is it's not testing a complex grammatical concept. It's testing your ability to create this, to take this long sentence and do a sentence structure and identify which elements are complete. What's a is there a verb with every subject? And the second thing that it's testing is your ability to really communicate the entire meaning, which is where choice A versus choice D is there.
Mhm.
Choice D, people who are able to identify that there's a missing verb, but don't focus on the contrast which the author wants to communicate, end up with choice D. And the learning for those folks is, yes, good job if you were able to identify,
The
the
missing
missing.
verb.
But also you're doing 80 to 90% of the work. You're getting 0% of the credit because
Mhm.
you're not taking meaning into account while going forward. It's an easier fix for you,
Mhm.
just to really tell you.
Right.
Does that make sense? And while we go forward, you guys can really just say, what do you mean no verb? No verb means no verb. The subject exists, there is no verb.
Every subject needs to have a verb for it to constitute the complete sentence. So here's heirloom tomatoes is just hanging by itself. It has no verb. So again, in this through these two questions, what we've seen are two different skills that you need to build in order to master, truly apply the meaning-based approach. Skill number one, visualize the sentence, create that mental image of the sentence. Okay, that is something that you absolutely have to do if you are trying to understand the meaning of the sentence. Till the time you don't create that mental image of the sentence, you truly have not understood the meaning of the sentence. The second skill is sentence structure. Your sentences that you're going to see on the test, they're going to be long, convoluted, but they are going to be built on very solid foundations, right? That is why if you simplify the sentence structure, if you understand what is the sentence structure that the author has used, that will help you with the visualization of the meaning. In this case, what we did was we created the sentence structure and then we were able to tabulate the meaning in our head. That's another way to visualize the meaning, right? And then it helps you with the identification of deterministic grammatical errors. And both of those knowledge of meaning, knowledge of errors, you take into your answer choice analysis. You don't leave them right there. You take those two analysis with you when you're looking at the answer choices, and then you reject answer choices on solid grounds and select the final answer. Another thing that I do want to talk about over here is that we should not let the fear of missing out overburden our brain. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. This is the question, 65% difficulty. There are upwards of, there are four different pages of discussion over here, discussion that's happening on various things, such as, how do I tackle the usage of dash? Is choice E wrong because there are two consecutive modifiers? There's a dependent clause followed by an independent clause. I'm going to ask you one question. When you are reading articles on New York Times, on in Economist, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, do you ask this question that is there's a dependent clause followed by independent clause, or are there two consecutive modifiers? No. All you think about is what is the author saying in this sentence, in this article. You're trying to you're reading those articles to understand the meaning.
Do things. What is the author saying? Does it make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
But
and, and
you don't think about it in terms of grammar, right? Yes, grammar is important. You're utilizing grammar to understand meaning and not the other way around. When I see these discussions, I end up feeling that you're wasting your time over there. Why? Because you're asking questions that are not even relevant. Understand what the author is saying. That's all that matters. But in your pursuit of understanding what the author is saying, you're actually utilizing your knowledge of grammar.
I think the kind of discussions that we don't see a lot happen and which are really valuable is, if you go back to the first question, don't go back, but if you
Mhm.
look at the third question, what's the difference between by the action of ending or coming to the end?
Yes.
Those are valuable discussions because that's where meaning comes in, and those are the kind of things that the GMAT is going to test you on.
Mhm.
Okay, number one. Number two, the other piece, which is when it comes to these 700 level questions, more often than not, you're going to find it's the meaning that's communicated is either illogical or is logical but not in line with what the author is trying to say. And the way you get to which one of these errors it is by doing the sentence structure. So focus on building that skill, and you're going to reject answer choices with utmost confidence and in a single go rather than doing that back and forth.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah. So I think just two questions. I think we're at 9:20. What I'm going to do is I'm going to really talk about this. So a lot of people when they come to these sessions, what they really just do is they say, okay, this is the right way. I'm going to go and solve a bunch of questions and try and build those skills. And when it comes to building skills, you have to do focused effort. I mean, there's a way to really, go and solve 1,000 questions and build those skills, but that's a much longer way to do it. The right way to do it is to do focused effort, and then to do it. I mean, think about it. There's a reason why a drill exists in the world. You don't really, dig a hole using a hammer. You use a drill. You put in focused effort. All the energy that comes from a drill goes to a single point, and that's where you actually dig a hole, and that hole is precise. It serves a purpose, and you get something that's beautiful. You get a product out of it. In the same way, when you want to build skills, you want to make sure you do focused effort. So if you go to the next slide, Payal, um, uh, the skill of sentence structure, what it helps you do is it helps you visualize meaning. It helps you identify the errors. And when you do this, which is visualize the meaning and identify errors, you actually do the things on the right hand side. You reject the answer choices with good reason, and you reduce the back and forth. So let's say, how do we go about building this skill? How do you excel in sentence structure? So if you're an e-GMAT student, we start you with this. We don't teach you any grammar. We first teach you sentence structure, and that starts with something which is as basic as you know how a sentence is constructed. We start with a two-word sentence. John runs, and then convert it and translate this and extend it to a 35 word sentence. We really say, how is it that the author is adding information? How is it that that information is logical to begin with? Why? Because the 35 word sentence that you saw just now, Alien Tomatoes, started with that two-word sentence. Every other additional information was added in a logical fashion. Really, really important. So unless and until you know how something's built, you won't be able to really just decipher it, which is what the next module is, um, which is pause points, and where we start with that skill of sentence structure, to really just say. And again, same philosophy, it's just going in reverse. Repetition of a certain piece is really important. And then from that point on, we go into skill building, which is understanding the meaning. Now, Alak has an excellent question. Would you recommend taking short notes while doing such lengthy sentences to get the sentence structure? Yes, absolutely. When you are in the learning phase, you've got to do that. As I said, you have to make sure you do the right things. It will take you longer when you are in the learning phase, but it's supposed to take you longer. If it's not taking you longer, then you don't need that learning phase, right? So yes, make short notes, and as you start making these notes, what you're going to find is you train your uh, uh, your brain to make such sentence structure
Mhm,
maps automatically. So after you make 10 such sentence structure maps,
mhm.
the 11th one will start to form automatically, and your brain will tell you don't need that.
So
I
I
mean, that's
always tell
what
my
neural
students,
connections is.
Rajat. So we always tell our students that you take a Word document when you learn. So in this module, so when you're going through master comprehension course, you take a Word document with ten long sentences, and then you basically start to bulletize, start creating the sentence structure for these 10 long sentences without worrying about sentence correction at all. I mean, these are actual sentences that you pick up from Wall Street Journal, from New York Times article that you're reading, and you create these sentence structures. And as soon as you're done with the first 10 sentences, you'll automatically see the 11th sentence that you read. You'll automatically make that sentence structure in your head. You'll know where to pause, how long to pause for, and how to assimilate the meaning. That will happen. But this exercise has to be done by you. That conscious effort has to be done by you, so that next time when you read a long sentence, you're automatically doing that in your head. That's the skill building that you have to do.
And by the way, this is no different than what business schools do when you do case studies. You're
Mhm.
in a certain course, you do about 8 case studies or so. And then each of those case studies, you do the equivalent of sentence structures, and you're looking at successful companies. What did they do right? How did they execute it? What sequence did they execute in? Why does that make logical sense? In the same way, when you're doing the sentence structure, you're building that, taking that long sentence and dividing it into fragments. These are correct sentences, by the way. Okay, you're not trying to find out errors. What you're really saying is, what's the job that each fragment
Mhm.
is playing and or doing, or what's the role that it's playing, and then why is it doing that role? Why is it do it correctly? What's the logical linkages between these, each fragment? The moment you understand that, the then you're able to figure out when there are errors in sentence. You're able to figure that out. In
Mhm.
the same way, as in when you go to a business school, you understand what companies who succeed do, and you kind of look at another case study where companies fail. You'll be able to identify step A to B, B to C, B to C. There's inconsistency. Why? Because I've seen what a successful template looks like. No different. But you've got to build that skill. Now you start building that skill in master comprehension, and then you continue building that skill. Pile, if you go to the next slide, uh, in our core SC course. This is where this is just the modifiers module, but overall in the core SC core we have 33 learning activities, and which have about 140 odd examples, and each one of these activities is evaluated. So you're not just doing this. There's an AI that's running on it, and it tells you how well you've done this. Everything is scored over here. This 100% or this 80% is not completion. It's your performance in these, and that's when you get feedback and you say, okay, these are the things that you've got to revise. And then from there on, when you do this, by the time you do this, master comprehension and go through the core SC course, at, by this time your timing is set. Then you go into Scholarinium, and then you practice. There are about another 400 odd questions over there. Each one of them has sentence structure in there. That's, you can see about twice as many questions as what you have in the official guide, or so. Okay. And this is where, if there are any lingering errors, each question has built-in analytics in there. If there are any lingering errors, we identify those errors, or weaknesses, and then we really go back, ask you to go back to the course, revise this, come back and validate that improvement. That's the closed loop process that you go through that allows you to go from that 60th percentile to that 80th and then to that 90th percentile ability without even taking a mock test. Okay. And no one gets there in the first go. Let me just say this. It's not easy. No one gets there in the first go. But people who put in their diligent effort, people who track data, people who continue to do this and track their improvement get there. Why? Because this isn't rocket science.
It's skill building.
It is skill building, and we are all good at building skills. That's what makes us as humans different from
Mhm.
other mammals. Okay. All right. And we have lots of examples. You go to a YouTube channel, you can look at those examples, or so. But this is the chart that I want you to be able to do. This is one of the 7 charts which where you track your ability improvement. Okay, where you can see this guy is starting at that 58% accuracy. This is beginning of scholar reading. So even after doing steps 1 and 2, going through the master comprehension course, going through the SC course, the guy started with 58% accuracy. He identified his errors, identified where he made mistakes, built that error log, and from there on, you can see when his accuracy was 58%, his time to answer questions was 2 minutes. Pile, if you can mark
Mhm.
that. And as he did that, as he focused on building that error log, focused on iterating, he was able to get to that 84% 84%, and the time to answer questions that continued to reduce. And we track this in Scholarinium, where the first block is the 30 plus attempts. The second vertical bar chart is 16 to 30 attempts. This is the second one, and the last one is the last 15 questions. And you need to be able to divide that accuracy into chunks and really say, are you truly improving? Okay. All right, I think, Pyle, this is where we will end. We do have another CR session, and Karthike, if you can share the link, this is a session this weekend. If you guys want to see how visualization works in CR, you can join. You can register for that session, and join there. Okay, let's just get that, and
That would be 8:30 p.m., right, Rajat?
8:30
Daylight
p.m.
saving time.
IST.
IST.
No, that one is still, we don't do the daylight saving time.
You
Well,
don't?
this Sunday is when we do the daylight saving
Sunday.
time.
Oh, I thought that was okay. Yeah, so
So the
7:30.
number property session would be at 8:30 p.m. That's
Mhm.
when
Okay.
daylight saving time happens.
Okay. So,
Yep.
guys, it's all about skill building. Visualization as a skill is significant in SC, and everything in the SC course is built around that. Visualization in CR, that's a skill that's very critical for you to get to that 90th percentile in CR. So,
Okay. Questions at this point. I'd be happy to take on any question that you have. You can spend about 10 to 20 minutes on questions.
Should I stop share then? Stop screen share, Rajat?
Yeah, I think we can stop our screen share. We can really
Okay.
move on to this view.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Let us know the questions that you have. And if you like what you've learned, press the like button. Okay, and let's just see if we have some questions. All right, it seems we don't have any questions. That's excellent. One of the other things I want to really just talk about is we have an excellent free trial. Do try and take a look at the free trial. You don't need to pay $1 to check it out, and yeah, so just log into e-GMAT, take a look at the concepts, and see if you that learning style suits you. Okay. All right. Bye bye, and have a great day.
Bye bye and good luck for your GMAT preparation.
Are we giving free subscriptions for this Halloween? No, we give free webinars and we help you get scholarships. Uh, we don't give free subscriptions. So it's one of those things you can't really, as a company, you can't really say, I'm going to give a free subscription to person A or person B or person C and not to someone else. No, those some things. That's something that we don't do. Our goal is always to provide something that's of very high value, that delivers success, and you can see the stats. And frankly, if you need help, uh, you can take a look at the course. So so yeah. um, and we focus our time on building energy. It's something that a lot of content and a lot of technology. Something you'll see in the upcoming 45 to 50 days is with regards to the kind of tech upgrades that we're doing. You're going to see stuff that's something that no one has done with regards to making your success deterministic and predictable, taking that to that next level. Okay. All right, guys. With that, thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. We'll see you guys either on e-GMAT or in our webinars, either on the e-GMAT platform or on Adobe Connect. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Bye bye.